Hello, and welcome to episode number 203 of the LSR podcast, the podcast so universally loved. People listen to it while pretending to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. I am Matt Brown, joined each and every week by Adam Candee and Dustin Gouker. You can follow them on the Twitter machine for free. It's over there at Dustin Gouker, at Adam Candee, 2 E's, no Y. And if you hate yourself, you can follow me at Matt Brown M2. We will talk about what's going on in Florida. We will talk about a couple of, one definite closure and one kind of almost-ish closure type of deal. And then we have one of the big boys that we think is out there in Fanatics that is no longer in beta. But Dustin, let's kick things off here. ESPN, the big news, obviously, of the last 2 weeks. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's written an article. Everybody's used the Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it to put their opinion out there with all this. So now that we have let this settle just a little bit, how do we think, how do you feel about it? Where does your opinion lie? Or is it the same as it was whenever we did this podcast a week ago?
It's changed slightly, I think. I mean, we're still viscerally reacting to what was going on last week. Like, it happened almost in real time for us. So, I mean, I think here's what's clear. Penn has aspirations beyond what Barstool was providing. It would, like, just sticking with Barstool, like, it was pretty obvious they had run up against their ceiling. Nothing was going to change that. Maybe you could have spent money to try to change that. It wasn't. ESPN is clearly a chance to improve its fate in online gambling in the United States. I think there's no question about that. It's just a matter of how much more it's improving its fate. If it's, we're going to get into this, but a colleague, Eric Ramsey, wrote a good piece kind of analyzing the upside for ESPN Bet and Penn Entertainment moving forward. But I think that's the same. The goal is podium position, top 3, right? If it's not top 3, then I think that's where this becomes a failure. Because at that point, they probably should have gotten out, stuck with Barstool, something else, who knows? But that's where I come out of it. And I think top 3 is realistic. I mean, obviously the dynamics are changing. We're going to get into Fanatics coming into the market in a serious way as well. Everything's changing in real time, but that 10% of market, top 3, those are things that are possible for ESPN Bet that I don't think were possible under Barstool Sportsbook.
Adam, I'm sure you have been asked a ton over the last week. I've actually been asked a couple of different times, what I feel about everything, how I feel about everything. I think I was a little more bullish on the upside of this than you guys were a week ago. Where do you sit a week later here?
Well, I really would point everyone to that piece that Eric Ramsey wrote at LegalSportsReport.com, where he goes through both what he sees as a bull case for ESPN Bet and then a bear case as well. He discusses the podium position expectations that Dustin mentions. He discusses whether it's reality for the 15 to 20% that Penn wants to be able to achieve with ESPN. Newsflash, that's going to be pretty difficult, but podium position could mean a lot of different things, and it's going to come down to how fragmented the market really becomes, whether or not Fanatics and ESPN are drawing in people who have not bet before, or if they are in some way taking away from the bigger boys like DraftKings, FanDuel, and the legacy casino companies. So I'm not sure a lot has changed for me in terms of what my expectations are. I think what we've just had is an opportunity to hear more from Jay Snowden, the CEO of Penn, to hear more from those who are just, let's say, ESPN naysayers in general, who are more concerned about the overall business for ESPN, who see this as a Hail Mary by Disney to try to keep ESPN in the place that we've all talked about on this podcast as the dominant global sports media brand.
Yeah, I went to a wedding this past week. My former co-host, Stormy Bonatoni, got married. And so I did some little recon work of my own. I'm in a room full of people who, not everybody, but there's a lot of people who are tangentially involved in either the industry or sports or whatever it might be, given the connections to her and all the things that she's done in the industry. And so I started talking to people a little bit about this. I was more curious as to whether my thought was a little bit more elevated of the ESPN brand in general than what is actually out there in the public sentiment right now. And so I got a pretty mixed bag, right? And it was kind of what we thought. I think we kind of assumed this, but like the older the person that I talked to, the more the bull case for ESPN being a reality was realistic. And then the younger the person I talked to, the less bullish of the bull case for ESPN than it was. And I think, look, we've been very honest about that. Like ESPN to us, to our age group, is like synonymous with all things sports, right? I mean, like we grew up, the only way we saw sports highlights was turned on ESPN every single night. Like ESPN is ingrained in me. It is like a thing of my childhood and whatever. But that's obviously not necessarily the case for maybe even the generation below us, but certainly the two generations below us, right? And so their view of ESPN is more basically where you go to find the SEC or where you go to find, whatever it might be. And so Monday Night Football, but not necessarily kind of like the end all be all when it comes to sports. And so it's pretty interesting. That being said, we do know that older people have more money, have more disposable income, have more, to possibly give this a try when it comes down to it from ESPN Bet. And Adam, I do want to pose this question to you. There has to be at least some percentage of the population. I'm curious as to what you think, like just how small that percentage of the population is that is of the mindset, hey, I get it, but I don't trust this whole FanDuel. I don't trust this whole DraftKings. I don't know that, whatever. They just live out there in the internets, and all this. Like what percentage of people might actually try a betting app now because the ESPN branding, a legacy company, something they've known since they were children, they've grown up with, all of that. Like there has to be some percentage of the population, right? And I'm just wondering how much or how small you think that might actually be.
Well, I think it's to me, it's less a question of brand awareness and trusts in the end than anything else. I ultimately think when you look at brand awareness for ESPN, it's huge everywhere. There's nothing that you need to learn about with that. With you talk about trust, you trust it as much as anybody in the media is trusted these days. I again go back to the question that I think it really is about here, which is about, in the end, who is it that has not been activated at this point, right? And to me, that's not someone who's in ESPN's database. If anybody has that play to be able to make, I think it's more on the Fanatic side than it is on the ESPN side, because of the fact that people who buy retail might not necessarily be sports fans. It might be mom, uncle, grandma who went to buy a hat for someone for Christmas who happens to be in the database, and maybe you're getting a non-traditional customer in there. So I really do think it's less a question of that person who didn't trust FanDuel, DraftKings, or whoever, because their ubiquity is enormous at this point, right? FanDuel and DraftKings have spent billions of dollars getting their awareness in front of people. And I think the only ones who don't trust them necessarily are those who are deeper into the sports betting space, who maybe haven't had great experiences thinking that they're sharper bettors, people who've been limited, people who have bad feelings that go back to the DFS days, whatever it might be. I still think it is more about who is the person who has not been touched yet.
Yeah, Dustin, I guess the thing that I still am pretty bullish on from a week ago is just, I think that this goes just how far the ESPN personalities are involved. Like, I think that that's kind of the ceiling case for me in all of this. I mean, there is something that, again, love him or hate him, there is something to Stephen A. Smith, who has one of the most popular morning shows out there, like talking about this regularly. Obviously, Scott Van Pelt is one of the most beloved broadcasters there is in all of the business. You brought up, which I had totally forgot, Pat McAfee has a massive following, and people love that dude. I mean, could this even branch into, a Kirk Herbstreit or whatever, again, another guy that is universally beloved and all this. Like, now, if those guys get involved in all of this, I do see a ceiling, right? Like, I do see kind of the bull case kind of getting there, because again, these are guys that Adam, you were talking about trust, not only trusted and whatever, but like they've been around, them, they're familiar, and maybe you listen to them a little bit more than you do just a random commercial or an ad or something. But Dustin, again, we won't find out until November, and maybe not even in November. Who knows? Like, maybe that's a gradual roll in, or it never happens in the first place.
Yeah, this is the part that even a week later we don't really know, is what is the integration look like, and it totally does depend on. And I would agree with Adam. Who is the ESPN user that hasn't been exposed to sports betting and tried to sign up for a sports book, like that wanted to sign up for a sports book? That seems like a tough get. It's not impossible, but ESPN, getting to those bull cases, you need to convert people who weren't betting on sports before. Like, just I don't see them just taking market share away from people. Yes, maybe some, but they have to grow the pie. I think that's the value add of ESPN, and that's again a big question mark that if they can even do that. I do agree. Like, there are like McAfee was anecdotally was a place that getting a lot of FanDuel conversions, right? Because he was opening up to an audience who maybe like, they trust Pat to say go bet at FanDuel, right. Or Scott Van Pelt's another one. Like he's already in the gamble. He's already does gambling content. He's in that space. People would trust him. Say, hey, let's go bet at ESPN Bet. I think that those are interesting. I mean, is it needle moving? Depends on the scenario, but this whole thing is where it comes down is how does it all work when it actually rubber meets the road in November and moving on? Is that going to move the needle? Is there this flywheel of content and sports betting that really works with ESPN that hasn't worked anywhere else? Again, hasn't worked with Barstool. That was the idea. Is Barstool like, these people want to gamble. We're going to do content about gambling. It's all just going to be a self-perpetuating wheel that continues to make itself run. And that never happened at Barstool. Can ESPN do that? I think that's the big question.
And Matt, to build on the point that you're talking about right now, and to get a little bit into the sports talk radio idea of this, Van Pelt and McAfee are not the kind of personalities that ESPN is pushing right now. ESPN is pushing Stephen A. Smith. ESPN is pushing Mad Dog. Like, I can't open the ESPN app without finding out what Stephen A. or Chris Russo think about something. And frankly, I couldn't possibly care less what either of them think about anything. So if that's the type of personality that they continue to lean into with sports betting, they're not going to be successful. Nobody's going to listen to Stephen A. Smith telling them to download a sportsbook app. They will probably listen if Scott Van Pelt comes out there and says, hey, this is the one that I really trust. This is the one that, I believe that this is a good product. Then I do think that there's something in that.
And we do know they want to get into New York. We've talked about Texas is kind of the next very big one that at least has a chance of happening. We know that won't happen next year. It would be 2 years from now. So we do at least have an idea of, where could Penn get some market share? Where could this start to go? I mean, obviously New York, biggest market that we're dealing with right now, Texas, hopefully to come here soon. That could obviously be a place where they would, if they're already kind of established, could be going in kind of neck and neck with all the other guys as they go in there as well. So there is that, right, Dustin?
Yeah. And I want to talk to Adam too more about this. Why do we want to be in New York? Like, everyone's saying they're having a hard time making money. I guess maybe they think they're going to just turn on a spigot of customers and the ESPN users in New York. I don't know. But we already had Penn and Barstool saying, you know what, we didn't get in New York. We're going to lose money anyway. So why has that story changed as well? That's kind of wild in retrospect, right, Adam?
Oh, it's absolutely wild. And frankly, it's disingenuous. It involves people covering up for Dave Portnoy, because that's, in the end, what we found out through Jay Snowden and the earnings call and the conversations that he's had after that about what happened with the Fanatics, with the bid for Barstool getting into New York. Well, that ultimately failed because of Dave Portnoy, is the implication that we're getting from not only Portnoy, who said we were denied licenses because of me, but from Snowden, who talked about Barstool going back to create content in an environment that does not involve regulation. So the comments that Jay Snowden gave this week talking about being involved in New York didn't change the tune entirely to say, oh God, it's a great market. We love the 51% tax rate. But he essentially made it sound like, yeah, you can't afford not to be there. Now, there's no clear path for them to get in. It's going to take either the sale of somebody else's license or, I don't know, say Ballybet finally flopping at some point, even though they've flopped spectacularly to this point. Like, would they flop to the point where they give the license up? Or does New York choose to expand the market? That could be another question as well. But right now, you look at it and say, okay, what you weren't saying at the time that you are saying now is that Barstool brand was the reason you didn't get into New York.
Yeah. And finally here, I do wonder, as we move into kind of like version 3.0 of all of these sports books and stuff, like we've mentioned this multiple times on the podcast, but like what is your retention strategy, and what is really going to resonate with the vast majority of customers out there? And again, we're talking about the 99%, not the 1%. And the deposit bonus model and the things like that and all that, like, I don't know if that's it, man. Like I said, I've got some buddies who are, sports fans who are more casual bettors for sure. They tend to lean into the places that give them reward stuff, so they get reward points or whatever. Like, we know Fanatics is going to be doing this like Fanatics Cash thing where you can basically, every time you make a bet, you're going to be getting points that you can use in the store to buy memorabilia or sports cards or whatever and stuff like that. I mean, ESPN has a lot of sports rights and they have a lot of things they can do. Like, is their reward program, does Penn lean into them for, experiences, right? Like going on to the Sports Center set, going to Monday Night Football, doing that, whatever it might be. Like, I think those are the type of things that long-term are going to resonate with the casual bettor far more than like hey, here's, another $100 match thing and whatever and all that. Cause I mean, eventually that's just, I think that's just going to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah, and on the retention piece, I think the other part is just you just want an app that works and that you enjoy using, right? That's the baseline, and I think it's pretty clear that DraftKings and FanDuel have been very good at that to this point. And Barstool, we've talked about this in the past about the Barstool Penn. They just redid the app. The reactions are mixed. It's slightly better is what the consensus seems to be, but you really just need to have, once you get on there, you just want to have fun, right?
Yeah.
You want to, and everything you talked about is dovetails with that, just being able to enjoying your experience while in the app or having a second screen experience with ESPN. And I just want to say, Matt, I really enjoyed your anecdotes today. They're really good.
Yeah, listen, I'm trying, man. Listen, I'm out here doing market research for free. You don't have to pay me. I'm not Eilers and Krychek or whatever and all. You don't have to pay me. Like I'll do all the market research for free. Adam, we got Florida out there, and of course, Florida was a state that had it for a hot minute, no longer, and we're trying to figure out what's going on down there.
Yeah, if you ask Calvin Ridley, probably a hot minute too long. So Florida right now is kind of in a waiting state, and we were waiting 45 days past the district court ruling, I should say the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, that essentially seemed to clear the path again for Florida to relaunch its sports betting app with Hard Rock. But it will have to probably wait just a little bit longer because Wes Flagler Associates, who was the one involved in bringing this case in the first place against the compact signed by the Seminole Tribe and Governor Ron DeSantis, has filed for a rehearing en banc. And for those of you who don't want to get into junior law school stuff, essentially what they've done is mom and dad told you can't go on the field trip. It's their final decision. But you go back one more time, you're like, are you sure? And that's kind of where we are right now, because getting that rehearing en banc is a long shots for Wes Flagler Associates, for the district, I should say the Circuit Court of Appeals, to reevaluate its own decision, because what essentially happens is it's a panel of that larger Circuit Court of Appeals that makes the initial decision. You ask for a rehearing with the entire court. It's rare. There usually would have to be something that would be wrong with the decision, according to what we know from John Holden, our legal expert. And we'll have a piece up today from John Holden further explaining what he sees as the next steps here. But still possible that we see Florida with Hard Rock this NFL season, because technically they could choose to relaunch during this time, but they would be risking having to launch and shut down.
Dustin, I do want to ask you this, because we're, obviously Florida, a massive state and all that, tons of sports, tons of college sports, tons of pro sports, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, as far as like the market itself, I don't think we're really kind of jumping up and down about its prospects, because it's going to be so restrictive. Like, am I out of line in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's going to be a monopoly. There are paths to where you could, that other brands could partner with the Seminole Tribe and also be able to do that. That would come at great expense, potentially. So it's feasible. But yeah, right now as we sit here, what's the impetus for, we've even heard Hard Rock say in the past, like, we would welcome other brands and some competition in the market. Is that true today as it was then? Who knows? The bottom line is, I don't think they want to launch without some pretty good certainty that they're not going to have to close it down again. Right. That would be pretty bad, right? Like, you already opened, you got your false start, right? Open once, had to shut it down. If you did it again, man, then you're really confusing people. If you like, oh, we're open, guess what? We're closed again. Like, if you did it a third time, I'm not sure people would believe you, right? Like, so I think I would imagine we're going to not see this actually launch until they're very certain that there's not any chance of them getting, going back into shutdown mode again anytime in the near future, because that would be such a bad customer experience and could, really kind of make Florida sports betting just bad moving forward. Like,
right.
It'd be so confusing for the user if they had to shut it down again. So, while it's possible, I think they're going to make sure that they're sure before they do anything about relaunching that app.
And Adam, unlike a lot of these states that, we're kind of holding out and, we were like, you're costing yourself money because these people can just cross the border and go to XYZ in this major cities here, and here. Like, that's just like not the case in Florida, right? I mean, it's basically like you are definitely pushing everybody offshore. Like, I mean, like there is no way if you live in Miami, you're not going anywhere. Like, you're going offshore, right? I mean, like there's just no way for you to, even if you had in your heart, like the truest of intentions in your heart, you wanted to bet legally, I mean, you just can't do it. So you're going to Bobby the bookie down the street, or you're betting offshore.
I know, Bobby. Be nice to Bobby. We want ultimately for the Florida market to have the same choices that other markets do. But right now, the choice is essentially going to be, if they get it back, Hard Rock, or Hard Rock. And we have no idea if the product's going to be any good, right? We know there are people who have had success in online gaming behind the product. That's great. It gives you at least a start to believe in. We've seen the product in a couple of other states. So we know that it at least functions. It has not been a contender anywhere else. It has not made any sort of impact. And so if it's going to make an impact, it's going to make an impact because it's the only game in town when it comes to Florida. But as you said, Matt, if people are savvy, if there are people who've done this before, then you're going to have to come up with something that's better than what they have already for them to become regular customers.
I'd be remiss if we didn't also mention that you could place parlays at daily fantasy sports sites in Florida right now if you wanted to.
What are you, Dustin? I've never heard of this before.
Dustin lobbing the grenade right there at the end. Good stuff. All right, so No House Advantage. If you go to nohouseadvantage.com, Dustin, you are met with an interesting statement. And No House Advantage is no longer.
Yeah, this is one of those daily fantasy sports 2.0, fantasy versus the house. You do parlays with player performances based on their statistics. They do other stuff. They did other stuff too, I guess I should say. But yeah, this is a smaller player in that market that is now shut down. They're telling customers to fill out a PDF form to get their money back. I got news for you. That nothing good's coming of that. This is not a serious way to handle transactions. It probably means they're out of money. It probably means they're trying to slow roll this as best they can, because what you should be doing is just processing withdrawals, and they clearly don't have player funds to do so because of whatever has happened in the background. And this is this is my pet project right now, but this is what's going on in DFS 2.0 right now. This company is operating using this vague umbrella of unlawful internet gambling enforcement act says it's okay. Game of skill laws say it's okay. DFS laws in a bunch of states say it's okay. This is not under any kind of real regulation. These companies are generally avoiding the places with actual DFS regulation so they can do whatever they want. And this is the outcome, right? Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen with any of the bigger players in this space like PrizePicks and Underdog, but this is what happens in tier 2. And again, we lived through this in DFS 1.0. There were companies that used player funds to fund operations, and they ran out of money and they had declared bankruptcy. We saw it in poker.
We saw it in poker. Then we saw it in DFS. I mean, it's like we've seen this. Like, this is the thing.
I've watched the movie several times and it doesn't turn out well. And again, this is why this whole industry needs to be actually regulated. It's continually wild that we're just saying, oh, this is okay. Again, there's this I don't know what the right word is, guise of integrity. Like, they're not really regulated anywhere. There's no recourse for these people to go, because any place with any kind of real teeth for regulation for DFS, they're not serving that market, right? Maybe you can go make a complaint, but nobody's auditing what they're doing. No, like, this is not a serious organization that's offering daily fantasy sports. They're obviously just offering sports betting as DFS. So anyway, this whole story is not ending well, and it is a cautionary tale. I'm not. Who's to say this is the only one this is going to happen to? This is the only one we know about.
No House Advantage has ceased operations effective immediately. Approximately a month ago, NHA was made aware of what may have been a coordinated attempt to defraud the company via payment chargeback scheme, which has impacted our ability to process withdrawals. As a safeguard for you, this is for you, not for us. This is for you. We have implemented a formal withdrawal request process. Please download the formal withdrawal request PDF form and email it with all of the requested information. Once completed, not you're going to promptly get your funds. A team member will review the request and reply with next steps. So that is where we are at with all this. Good luck and Godspeed. I hope you do get your monies though.
It seems that the only advantage is for the house, for Noah's House Advantage in this particular process. And just to add one little extra to what Dustin said about the guise of whether or not these things are real, we did have one of the founders of Underdog out here this week touting the fact that, hey, Colorado says it's okay, like we can have our pick'em game in Colorado. What they didn't tell you is that Colorado said you can have a pick'em game that has a minimum of 4 outcomes that are based on fantasy points. Not you can have a pick'em game that is props on this weekend's NFL preseason. So let's make sure that we're at least giving people the whole story when we're going out there and saying that, oh yeah, this state says it's okay. Yeah, they said a very redacted version is okay.
Adam, we say goodbye to No House Advantage, and we kind of basically say goodbye to William Hill in Nevada. There was an update that happened overnight, and whenever we pop the app open, it is just a clone. It is a skin of the new Caesars app as well. Caesars CEO Tom Reeg said, "We were operating on the equivalent of a Commodore 64 with the old technology. We now have the state-of-the-art Liberty app, which we operate in all of our jurisdictions." So the question might remain out there to some of the people, well, then why does William Hill even exist if you have Caesars? But I guess, Adam, one of the things that people don't really know is William Hill was a vendor for a whole lot of people. And then even when Caesars bought them, they continue to be a vendor for a whole lot of people in Nevada. So like Golden Gaming, which owns several casinos and pubs in town. Bally's in Lake Tahoe, which is, they also own the Tropicana, uses them. Binions, Downtown Grand, Hard Rock in Tahoe, the M at the south end of the Strip, the Palms, the Sahara, the Tropicana, the Silverton and the Venetian all use William Hill, which is owned by a competitor of theirs now. It's wild, but that's why William Hill still even exists, even though it's just a clone of what we get with the new Caesars app.
I do love Maddie's Only in Nevada corner here on the LSR podcast. The one thing that got me with this is that I'm not going to tell you the William Hill in-play betting experience was great. It wasn't. But it was about the only usable one regularly in the state of Nevada. So I hope Caesars is at least going to offer something similar to that, because there were only a couple of other places that even offer live betting. And no, guess what? It's not Circa who's out there talking about how they're the greatest thing that's ever happened to bettors. No, it's not South Point, where is another home in theory of betting in Las Vegas. The MGM experience, not great in my time in going through it. And so I could go through the list of this and tell you that there aren't a lot of great in-play betting experiences. So please, anyone listening at Caesars, if I can at least plug that part of the Atari back in, I would like to be able to use just that one, maybe that one game.
The main reason, Dustin, I did want to bring this up is just for just a real quick, it's more of an aside of anything else, which is the fact that the William Hill still did have the bulk of the handle in Nevada, which we know still has a decent amount of handle out there. And with this upgrade, there are going to be same game parlays available with this new app, right? Which has never been available in Nevada before, which we know is a huge revenue driver for rest of country. Now, will it be in Nevada? We shall see. But this does have William Hill, which again is the market leader as far as handle goes, offering a new product that literally, this is not like, oh, we do it better than our competitors. We are the only ones that have it. Like, we literally are the only ones offering it.
Yeah, I mean, the hold has been traditionally low in Nevada. That's what a lot of estimates were going off of, because we're like, oh, this is going to be carbon copy when other states start legalizing. It's upping. Nevada's going to start continue to grow, because of innovation and allowing new technology into the state. And it's Nevada was once the gold standard. It could be that again if they decided they wanted to be. And this is at least now we have an app that's not not I love the Commodore 64 reference. I definitely played a lot of Commodore 64 when I was a kid. But yeah, it's obviously good. And Nevada's always is continued to stick out like a sore thumb, and now getting into the 21st century with the betting apps now.
Adams, let's put a bow on this episode with the Fanatics news here. This is we know we have been at least operating under the beta in Tennessee and Ohio, a couple other states, but that is no longer.
No, 4 states have had the beta launch, and the beta launch essentially meant that you had to be a previous Fanatics customer, and they were going to let you in the door to get a look at that app. And it served for them as a good bug hunting period as well, to make sure that the product was going to be up to speed here in mid-August as they get ready for NFL Week 1. It is now open to everyone in their initial states, so we will see what Fanatics can do. I, again, probably remain a little bit higher on Fanatics than some people, just because I think they are the ones who have the ability to grow the pie, and they also have that, what should we call it? An X factor of a billionaire who don't care, who will just throw money at the whole thing. So maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I have brought this up a couple other times, but having gone with our very own Eric Ramsey and Brett Colson out to the National Collectors Convention in Chicago this past year, Fanatics is about to almost have a monopoly on that as well, right? I mean, they're going to have the official rights to everything except for baseball, which Topps has. And so that's even another way to reach potential customers is even through that type of stuff, right? And so there's a lot of different avenues, Dustin, when it comes down to it, that Fanatics can at least reach out. Now, we have no idea whether it's going to convert or not, right? I mean, like all we're ever doing with any of this stuff is like, hey, these are at least hot leads. Now, whether that actually leads to conversions or not, we don't really know, but these are at least pretty hot leads, considering these people are willing to spend money on sports in some way, shape, or fashion.
Yeah, I mean, this is different, right? This is we haven't seen something wholly different into the market in a while, right? This is ESPN really isn't even different. This is going to be Fanatics' whole value proposition is different. Whether that translates, who knows? But right now, different is good, and trying, again, tapping into customers and into fans in a different way. Hey, it could work. It might also flop spectacularly, but I'd rather bet on different than same old, same old.
Tell you what, sports cards are expensive these days. If you could start using your Fanatics cash or your Fanatics bucks or whatever it is to get some of them sports cards, man, I'll tell you, that would save me some money for sure. Certainly save Eric Ramsey some money and Brett as well. So we'll see how that all pans out. Guys, everything we do, absolutely free. So we do appreciate your support by go ahead, hit the pause button, give us a little 5-star review for listening on the audio side, and hit that subscribe button. That would be awesome. And if you're watching us over on the video side of things, hello. I know we are so incredibly handsome. And you could go ahead and hit that subscribe button down there as well and give us a thumbs up. It'll help more people find the page as we continue to grow everything over there. As always, LegalSportsReport.com for everything we talk about here, all of the great words Adam and team are putting together. Please go in and get the full in detail, in-depth reporting on all of this stuff. For Dustin, for Adam, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.